The crystalline spires of Nexus Station glowed with an eerie blue light as Commander Sarah Chen made her way through the lower markets. Her boots clicked against the metal walkways, echoing through the maze of stalls and shops that made up this part of the massive space station. This wasn't her usual patrol route, but nothing about today had been usual. The distress call had come in 3 hours ago, encrypted, desperate, and specifically requesting human intervention. In her 15 years of service with the Terran Peacekeeping Force, Sarah had never received such a peculiar request. The message led her here, to the dimly lit lower levels where the station's less fortunate residents made their homes. The air was thick with the mingled scents of various alien cuisines and the distinct ozone smell of overtaxed environmental systems. Commander Chen. The voice that called out was melodious but strained, like wind chimes in a storm. Sarah turned to face its source and felt her breath catch. A Chiron stood before her crystalline body refracting the ambient light into subtle rainbows. Unlike the proud, towering creatures Sarah had encountered before, this one was hunched, her translucent form clouded with stress fractures. Behind her, 3 smaller figures huddled, children, their bodies still showing the clear, unblemished patterns of youth. "I am Lyra," the Chiron said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Thank you for coming." Sarah's hand instinctively moved away from her sidearm. The Chiron were typically a peaceful species, known more for their achievements in art and architecture than any violent tendencies. "Your message mentioned you needed help." Lyra's crystalline form shifted, creating a sound like gentle wind chimes. "My mate, he was a researcher. He discovered something he shouldn't have. They killed him for it." Her form dimmed slightly. "Now they're coming for us." "Who's coming for you?" Sarah asked, her tactical training kicking in as she scanned the surrounding area. "The Syndicate. They think my children inherited their father's knowledge." Lyra moved closer, her crystalline body catching the light. "Please, Commander. Humans are known for their protective instincts, their ability to defend the weak. My children need that protection." Sarah studied the family carefully. The children were trying to appear brave, but she could see the way their forms flickered with fear. "The Syndicate isn't something to take lightly," she said. "They have influence throughout this sector." "I know." Lyra's voice cracked like breaking crystal. "But humans, you've stood against them before. You're the only species they fear. Please, Commander Chen, I will serve you, protect you, do whatever you require. Just help us survive." Sarah felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Taking in a Chiron family would complicate her life immeasurably. The Syndicate's reach was vast, and her superiors would question her judgment. But as she looked at the 3 children, their forms pure and unblemished, she knew she couldn't walk away. "I don't need a servant," Sarah said finally, "but I'll help you. All of you." She activated her comm unit. "Chen to Stalwart. 4 to Transport. Authentication code Delta 79. As the transport beam began to encompass them, Sarah caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows. Someone had been watching. The Syndicate already knew. The game was on, and Sarah had just made herself a player. But as the transport beam whisked them away to her ship, she couldn't help but smile. The Syndicate might be powerful, but they were about to learn why humans had earned their reputation as the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. What they didn't know was that Sarah Chen had a few secrets of her own. Secrets that might just keep this unusual family alive long enough to turn the tables on their pursuers. The Stalwart's command deck hummed with tension as Sarah stared at the holographic display before her. 6 Syndicate vessels had appeared at the edge of the system, their signatures masked but unmistakable to her trained eye. Her decision to help Lyra's family had drawn exactly the kind of attention she'd expected. "Commander," her XO, Lieutenant Rivera, spoke from his station. "High Command is demanding an explanation for our unauthorized passenger pickup. They're not happy." Sarah watched as Lyra's eldest child, Nova, traced patterns in the air with her crystalline fingers, creating complex geometric shapes that somehow interfered with the ship's sensors. It was an ability Sarah hadn't expected, one that hadn't been documented in any xenobiological database. "Tell them I'll file a full report once we're clear of the system," Sarah replied, knowing full well that wouldn't satisfy them. But she had bigger problems than angry superiors. The ship's medical bay had revealed something extraordinary about Lyra's children. Their crystalline structures weren't just beautiful. They were capable of processing and storing quantum information in ways that defied current understanding. If the Syndicate got their hands on them, they'd have access to computational power that could crack any encryption, bypass any security system. "Your ship," Lyra said from behind her, the Chiron's voice tinged with concern. "It cannot outrun them forever." Sarah turned to face her unusual passenger. "It doesn't need to. Humans have survived this long in space because we learned something important. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense." The commander's fingers danced across her control panel, bringing up a tactical display of the nearby asteroid field. It was dense, treacherous, and perfect for what she had in mind. Most species avoided such dangerous navigation, relying on their advanced AI systems to plot safe courses. But humans had maintained their manual piloting skills, seeing them as essential rather than obsolete. "Lieutenant Rivera, sound battle stations, but keep it quiet. No klaxons. I don't want to advertise our intentions." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing the ship for combat, without the usual accompanying noise. Sarah had trained them well, emphasizing the human advantage of unpredictability. "Lyra," Sarah called out, "I need you and your children to go to the ship's core. The radiation shielding there is strongest." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "And I need to know everything about what your mate discovered. The real reason the Syndicate is after your family." The Chiron's form dimmed slightly, her crystalline surface clouding with emotion. He found a way to encode consciousness itself, to transfer minds between crystalline matrices. The Syndicate, they want to use it to achieve immortality, to transfer their leaders into bodies that could live forever. Sarah's tactical mind raced with the implications. No wonder the Syndicate was willing to commit so many resources to this chase. "And your children? They can do this naturally, can't they?" Lyra's form pulsed with affirmation. "They are the next evolution of our species, pure enough, perfect enough to serve as vessels. But they are children, not tools to be used." The tactical display blinked as the Syndicate ships moved closer, their formation suggesting they planned to herd the stalwart into a trap. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. They were thinking like machines, following optimal pursuit protocols. But humans had learned long ago that optimal didn't always mean effective. "XO, plot a course through the asteroid field. Manual control." Sarah's hands gripped her command chair. "And get me a secure channel to Admiral Harrison. If we're going to protect these children, we're going to need some off-the-books support." As the stalwart dove into the asteroid field, Sarah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that had driven her ancestors to explore the stars. The Syndicate might have superior technology and overwhelming numbers, but they were about to learn an important lesson about humanity. When humans decided to protect something, they didn't just fight. They rewrote the rules of the game entirely. The first explosion lit up the asteroid field as one of her carefully placed mines detonated. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Sarah Chen was going to show the galaxy why humans had earned their reputation as the most dangerous protectors in known space. Admiral Harrison's holographic form flickered in the secure briefing room, his expression grave as he absorbed Sarah's report. The stalwart had found temporary refuge in a nebula, its energy signature masked by the natural radiation, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the Syndicate found them. "Let me get this straight, Commander," Harrison said, his weathered face showing concern. "You're harboring 3 alien children who can essentially serve as organic quantum computers and consciousness transfer devices, and the most powerful criminal organization in the sector wants them." "That's the simplified version, sir." Sarah stood at parade rest, her posture betraying none of the exhaustion she felt. But there's more. The children aren't just passive vessels. They're actively evolving, learning what they can do. It's beyond anything we've seen before. As if to emphasize her point, a soft chime echoed through the ship's communication system. Nova, the eldest of Lyra's children, had integrated herself with the ship's systems in ways that even the best human engineers couldn't understand. The ship's efficiency had improved by 30% since their arrival. The Syndicate isn't just after immortality, Sarah continued. They want to create an army of hybrid consciousness. Imagine their most brilliant tactical minds transferred into bodies that never age, never tire, and can process information faster than our most advanced AIs. Harrison's hologram shifted, his fingers drumming against an unseen surface. You realize you've potentially sparked an interstellar incident. The Syndicate has legitimate business interests in 12 systems. They'll claim jurisdiction. They murdered a peaceful researcher and are hunting children. Sarah countered, her voice hard. Where's the jurisdiction in that? The Admiral's expression softened slightly. Always the defender of the defenseless, Chen. It's why I recommended you for command. He paused, considering. I'm sending the 7th Fleet to your coordinates. Unofficially, of course. But it will take them 3 days to arrive without drawing attention. Sir, we may not have 3 days. Sarah pulled up a tactical display, showing the movement of Syndicate forces. They're not just sending ships now. They've contracted the Shade Hunters. Harrison's hologram actually flickered at that news. The Shade Hunters were infamous. Cybernetically enhanced assassins who specialized in impossible extractions. They had never failed a contract. How many? Harrison asked. At least 3 vessels detected. Their stealth systems are good, but Lyra's youngest, Sarah, she can sense them somehow. The crystalline structure of her body picks up variations in subspace that our sensors can't detect. The Admiral absorbed this information with the careful consideration of a man who had survived 3 interstellar wars. You're not just protecting refugees anymore, Commander. You're sitting on a technology that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Sarah nodded grimly, which is exactly why these children need to remain free. Sir, I need authorization to implement Protocol Omega. Harrison's eyes widened. Protocol Omega was a last resort measure, allowing a commander to operate completely off the grid with full autonomy. It had only been used twice in human military history. You understand what you're asking. Once initiated, you'll be completely on your own. No support, no backup, no official recognition. Sarah's response was interrupted by a sudden shift in the ship's lighting. Nova's voice, sounding eerily like the ship's computer, but with harmonics impossible for human vocal cords, came through the speakers. Commander, the Shade Hunters. They're here. 3 vessels, emerging from subspace. Harrison's decision was immediate. Protocol Omega authorized. Commander Chen, give them hell. His hologram disappeared, leaving Sarah alone in the briefing room. She took a moment to center herself, then opened a ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the commander. The next few hours will determine not just our fate, but potentially the future of galactic civilization. The Shade Hunters are the best at what they do. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. But they've never faced humans protecting children before. Battle stations. As she made her way to the bridge, Sarah caught sight of Lyra's children in the ship's core, their crystalline bodies pulsing with complex patterns of light. They were singing something in their native language, a haunting melody that seemed to resonate with the ship itself. The stalwart's engines hummed in response, and Sarah felt the deck plates vibrate with a new frequency. They weren't just running anymore. They were preparing to show the galaxy why humans had earned their reputation as the most formidable protectors in known space. The Shade Hunters were about to learn that human ingenuity, combined with the unique abilities of their Chiron allies, was a force beyond their calculations. The stalwart shuddered as another graviton pulse swept through the nebula. The Shade Hunters were methodically destroying every possible hiding place, their advanced sensors piercing the cosmic dust and radiation that had temporarily sheltered Sarah's ship. Hull integrity at 67%, Lieutenant Rivera reported, his hands dancing across his console. The nebula's radiation is eating through our shields faster than we can regenerate them. Sarah studied the tactical display, watching as the three Shade Hunter vessels moved in a complex pattern that was slowly but surely boxing them in. These weren't ordinary pursuers. They thought in 4 dimensions, planning moves that wouldn't make sense until minutes or hours later. Nova, Sarah called out to the eldest Chiron child, who had integrated herself into the ship's systems. "What are you sensing?" The crystalline child's voice resonated through the ship's speakers, carrying harmonics that made the deck plates vibrate. "They're not just hunting us, Commander. They're hurting us. There's a quantum signature building at coordinates 227 Mark 43. Sarah's tactical training kicked in. A fold point. They're trying to force us into a manufactured wormhole. Her mind raced through the implications. One that probably leads straight to a syndicate containment facility. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Humanity had encountered manufactured wormholes before. They were notorious for being one-way trips. Lyra's voice came from the rear of the bridge, where she had been quietly observing. "Commander, my children, they've never attempted this before, but theoretically their combined crystalline matrices could." "Could what?" Sarah turned to face the Chiron mother, noting how her usually clear form had become clouded with worry. "Could reverse the polarity of a quantum fold, but the energy required would be enormous. And the strain on their systems." Lyra's form dimmed with concern. Before Sarah could respond, the ship rocked violently. A direct hit from one of the Shade Hunters had breached their outer hull on Deck 7. "Boarders detected." Security Chief Torres's voice cracked through the comm. "They're using some kind of phase technology. They're walking right through our barriers." Sarah's decision was immediate. "All hands, implement Protocol Zeta. Full manual control, no automated systems." She turned to her crew. Humanity survived its first steps into space without AI, without quantum computers, without all these fancy toys. Time to remind everyone why. The bridge erupted into activity as crew members disabled their neural interfaces, switching to physical controls. It was slower, less efficient, but also completely unpredictable to the Shade Hunters' advanced targeting systems. Sarah called out to the youngest Chiron child through the ship's comm. "Can you sense where they're going?" The child's response came as a series of crystalline tones that the ship's computer translated. "Engineering. They want to disable the core. But, Commander, we can stop them, if you trust us." Sarah looked at Lyra, seeing the fear and hope warring in the alien mother's crystalline form. "What do you need?" "Connect us directly to the ship's power grid," Lyra said. "All 3 children. Let them become one with your vessel's systems completely. It's dangerous. No Chiron has ever attempted such a deep integration with alien technology. But if it works..." A massive explosion rocked the ship. The Shade Hunters were getting closer. "Do it," Sarah ordered. She opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, prepare for emergency procedures. Engineering, route all power controls to the bridge. Security teams, fall back to defensive positions around the ship's core." As the crew scrambled to comply, Sarah felt something change in the air around her. The lighting shifted, taking on a crystalline quality that seemed to bend reality itself. Nova, Sarah, and their sibling Vex had begun their integration with the ship's systems. The stalwart's power signature fluctuated wildly as the Chiron children merged their consciousness with the vessel's core. Displays flickered with impossible readings as the ship itself began to transform, its very structure taking on properties of crystalline matter. Through the main view screen, Sarah watched as the approaching wormhole writhed and twisted, its quantum structure being rewritten by forces that defied conventional physics. The Shade Hunters, for the first time in their existence, hesitated. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The Hunters were about to learn why humanity had thrived in space, not because of their technology, but because of their willingness to try the impossible, to trust the unknown, and to protect those who needed it, no matter the cost. The final battle was about to begin, and Sarah Chen intended to show the galaxy exactly what happened when human determination met alien potential. Space itself seemed to bend around the stalwart as the Chiron children's consciousness merged fully with the ship's systems. The vessel's hull had taken on a crystalline sheen, refracting light in ways that made it appear both solid and ethereal simultaneously. Remarkable, Lieutenant Rivera breathed, watching as his console transformed before his eyes. The standard displays had been replaced by crystalline formations that somehow conveyed more information than any conventional screen could. They're not just interfacing with the ship, they're evolving it. Sarah felt it too. A resonance through the deck plates, a harmony between organic and mechanical that defied conventional understanding. The Shade Hunters' boarding parties had reached engineering, only to find themselves unable to phase through barriers that now operated on quantum principles their technology couldn't comprehend. Multiple syndicate vessels dropping out of hyperspace, Torres reported from Tactical. They're forming a containment grid. Sarah watched as the enemy ships moved to surround them, their formation precise and deadly. But something was different now. The stalwart's sensors, enhanced by the Chiron children's crystalline integration, could see patterns in subspace that no human technology had ever detected. "Nova," Sarah called out, "what are you seeing?" The eldest child's voice resonated through the ship, carrying harmonics that made Sarah's bones vibrate. "They're connected, Commander. All of them. The Shade Hunters, the syndicate ships, they're being controlled by a single quantum network. A network we can touch." Sarah understood immediately. They wanted to use you as vessels for their consciousness, but they never considered that you might be able to reach back through their own systems. Lyra moved forward, her crystalline form pulsing with a mother's pride and fear. "My children can disable their entire fleet, but the energy requirement, it could shatter them." "No," Sarah's voice was firm. "We're not sacrificing anyone today." She turned to her crew. "Humanity survived and thrived in space because we learned to adapt, to find solutions that no one else would consider. Lieutenant Rivera, prepare for full power transfer from all non-essential systems. Torres, target these coordinates with everything we have left." She transmitted a series of numbers that seemed random until the tactical display updated, showing a pattern of gravitational weaknesses in the space around them. Weaknesses that only became visible through the Chiron children's enhanced perception. "Security teams, fall back to the core. Engineering, stand by for emergency protocols." Sarah took a deep breath. "Nova, Sarah, Vex, we're going to try something that's never been done before. Instead of you adapting to our technology, we're going to adapt our technology to you." The next few minutes were a blur of activity as the crew implemented Sarah's plan. Power conduits were rerouted, shield frequencies were modified to match crystalline resonance patterns, and the ship's weapon systems were recalibrated to fire beams that carried the same quantum signatures as Chiron consciousness. The syndicate fleet opened fire, their weapons converging on the stalwart's position. But where their energy beams struck, they found not metal and shields, but a crystalline lattice that absorbed and redirected their power. "Now," Sarah ordered. The stalwart's modified weapons fired, each beam carrying within it a fraction of the Chiron children's consciousness. They struck the syndicate ships with surgical precision, not to destroy but to transform. Computer systems crystallized, quantum networks shattered and reformed, and for a brief moment, the entire enemy fleet was linked in a way their masters had never intended. Through this connection, the truth of the syndicate's plans spread like wildfire, not just to their own ships, but to monitoring stations throughout the sector. Their scheme to enslave a species, to force evolution itself to bend to their will, was exposed to the galaxy. The Shade Hunters were the first to stand down, their enhanced minds recognizing the futility of their mission. The syndicate ships followed, their crews realizing that they had been fighting for masters who would have sacrificed them all for a chance at immortality. As the battle ended, Sarah walked to the ship's core, where Lyra waited anxiously. The three children were slowly separating themselves from the ship's systems, their crystalline forms glowing with new patterns and possibilities. "You did it," Lyra whispered, her voice carrying both joy and disbelief. "We did it," Sarah corrected. "Humans and Chiron, working together, creating something new." She looked at the children, who were now floating in a gentle crystalline dance. They're not just vessels for consciousness. They're the next step in evolution. And they'll need teachers who understand both the power of technology and the importance of choice. The stalwart's communication system came alive with messages from across the sector. Offers of sanctuary, promises of protection, and requests for cooperation from species who had witnessed the impossible merger of human determination and Chiron potential. As Sarah looked out at the stars through the crystalline enhanced view screen, she smiled. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had once again proven why they were known not just as warriors or diplomats, but as protectors, beings who would risk everything to defend those who needed help, and in doing so, forge connections that transcended the boundaries of species and space itself.